Well, hello and happy new year, our fellow friends, our fellow neighbors, and our fellow shining stars. Our next trolley stop is here, and our next trolley stop is now. Welcome back to another all-new episode of PR from the Heart's Neighborly Reviews Bookcast. To be precise, we have reached episode number 45. That is the 45th trolley stop here at PR from the Heart, here at the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast. My name is John Masiulionis, the manager of PR from the Heart and the co-host of the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast, joined as always each and every month by my faithful furry friend and forever companion, little Forrest, who reminds me, hey, John, I am not only your faithful furry friend and forever companion on the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast and your co-host, but also your faithful furry friend and forever companion across the board. And of course, as always, each and every month here at the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast, we are joined by our fellow neighbor, one of our favorite neighbors. In fact, you remember him and you love him as the beloved Mr. McFeely on the popular long-running children's television program, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Of course, we know him and we love him as David Newell. David, I hope that you and your family had a blessed holiday season. I know that we're back in the two squares in the screen, as I like to call it. The last time we had the opportunity to spend some quality time was in your neighborhood in Pittsburgh at the Center for Media Innovation in downtown Pittsburgh on the campus of Point Park University. So it's great to spend the full holiday season out in Pittsburgh, out in the Steel City, the birthplace, the home of Mr. Rogers. But of course, now you're back in Pittsburgh. I'm back here in San Diego. And here we are, another year, 2025. And hard to believe we are quickly approaching the 4-year anniversary of the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast.
Boy, that was speedy. But I'm sitting here and it's snowing outside, and you're sitting there and it's sun shining outside in San Diego. And Pittsburgh is a little chilly today, but it looks beautiful. The snow is coming down and it's very calm and peaceful, and the right weather for a bookcast. People could be curled up, at least in this part of the country, reading books or reading several books or 2 books we're going to talk about today.
Exactly.
But
I'm
it's book reading weather here in Pittsburgh.
I'm glad that you hit on that, because at the start of the year, it's always about setting new intentions, not even necessarily resolutions. When you set an intention, it's that much more of a strong decision. You come from more of an empowered place. And so we're encouraging all of our listeners and viewers, our fellow friends, our fellow neighbors, and of course, our fellow shining stars. If you are new to the program, what we do here at the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast, David and I, we take the time as a little tip of the cap to his character on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, a little tip of the character to not only Mr. McFeely, but also Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood as well. We take the time to deliver heartfelt reviews from some of the newest books that are available, newest children's books, that is, from the shining stars in the world of children's literature, those authors who are both published as well as those authors who are self-published as well, because we are doing our part to be able to provide a dedicated platform for parents, grandparents, caregivers, teachers, principals, librarians, superintendents, all educators, and of course, those who love great children's books, to let all of them know what is available on the market, especially after the holiday season. You're settling in and you're making strong intentions for your children. And of course, David, as you mentioned, being able to take the time and curl up with a good book, whether encouraging your little one to do that by themselves, give them some quality one-on-one time with themselves, or one of the best feelings is that when little ones can be read to by their mother, their father, their grandmother, their grandfather, an elder brother, an elder sister, it really is such a good feeling. And with the month of January and kicking off 2025, of course, we always have our housekeeping as well, too. It's always good to walk into a clean residence, a clean house, so to speak, to start off a new year. So one of the many ways that you can pledge your support for us here at the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast, for us here at PR from the Heart, and the authors whose books we're going to be featuring on episode number 45 of the program, you can subscribe to PR from the Heart's official YouTube channel. Join the more than 22,000 members of the PR from the Heart family. Those are our loyal subscribers on our official YouTube channel. And if these messages that we're going to be sharing here on episode number 45 of the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast, if these messages resonate with you, if they are lifting your spirits, if you feel that they need to be shared with someone in need, we encourage you to share this very special trolley stop that you are now enjoying. That is episode number 45 of the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast on your favorite social media platforms of your choosing. And also, PR from the Heart's Neighborly Reviews Bookcast is proud to pledge our support for Reading is Fundamental Pittsburgh. Now, if you are familiar with Reading is Fundamental, fantastic. If you're not, we've got you covered. Reading is Fundamental is the largest children's literacy non-for-profit organization in the country. And what they do is they provide not only children's books, but dedicated literacy tools, supplies, really encouraging children to connect with the love and joy of reading it and making it a lifelong practice, and really cultivating themselves to their favorite messages within their books. And especially Reading is Fundamental Pittsburgh supports children and children's literacy in low-income areas across the country. So, of course, there is a Reading is Fundamental affiliate chapter, so to speak. Get it? Chapter in a book and chapter in Reading is Fundamental. Right. So there is an affiliate out in Pittsburgh that is the Pittsburgh spot for Reading is Fundamental. So they provide children's books, literacy tools, developmental resources, again, from children that come from low income families throughout Pittsburgh. Did you know just most recently over the last several years that Reading is Fundamental Pittsburgh has delivered more than 100,000 children's books to over 23,000 children in need? We want to see those numbers continue to go up. We don't want to see the literacy rates plummet. We want to see the number of children's books, the number of kids reading children's books. That's one of our intentions for 2025 here at PR from the Heart. So you can pledge your support for Reading is Fundamental Pittsburgh by making a donation. As we like to say here on the program, no donation is too large, no donation is too small. You can head on over to rifpittsburgh.org/donate. Again, we're proud and privileged and blessed to be able to pledge our support for Reading is Fundamental Pittsburgh each and every month here on the program. Now, David, the theme of this particular bookcast, children really are a gift. And sometimes our children can be handfuls, right? You know, if we're a parent, you know, there's times where, you know, we look at our kids as blessings and gifts, and sometimes we look at them as, you know, pains in the you-know-whats, as the expression goes. But when you take the time and you are a parent, when you're a grandparent, when you're an educator, it's really important not only to enjoy the ride of life, but to enjoy the gift that are the gifts that our children are and the gifts that they have to give within us. So children have curiosity, they have wonder. We're going to be covering that thread in the first book that we're going to be sharing here on episode number 45 of the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast. But there are times where our children's lives are cut short, or even times when, you know, even when parents get to a little bit of an elderly age, it's always like, he'll always be my baby boy, she'll always be my baby girl. So even when the time comes when our children pass away, it's important that we know that the gifts that they gave to us will last forever. So these relationships, there's a reason why we call it unconditional, everlasting love. So that is the theme, the anthem of episode number 45 of the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast. And of course, the trolley has been sitting stationary for the holiday season, David, but now it's going to be racking up some mileage. Of course, as always, we start off, we go from San Diego to Pittsburgh, and then we head back to more of the West Coast, but the adjacent state that is nearby to California is Arizona. One of the states that has a lot of also sunshine, and one of the shining stars in the kidlit community in the city of Tucson is children's author Maria Boyd. Now, she is not only the children's author behind the brand new release Tink's BUGTastic Surprise, but she is also the founder, owner, and operator of Remarkably Made Publishing. So the cool thing is that not only is Maria sharing her stories, but she's inspiring other authors to be able to bring their messages into the world and share them. And she's doing it from a very grounded, a very empathic, a very faith-centered component, while at the same point in time, again, encouraging parents and caregivers and grandparents and educators to just, again, enjoy the gifts that our kids bring to us, even if it may look, not necessarily the most interesting in the particular moment of choosing. And that's a little teaser, as we like to say here at the program, because again, the title of the story is Tink's BUGTastic Surprise. So David, again, I'm really excited because, whenever we crack the cover and dive into the pages of the books that we're sharing, it's got a little bit of an even better feeling because we're starting off the new year. And this is the first book, even though it's the 45th trolley stop, it's the first book that we're sharing as part of 2025. So let us start at the top, the forefront, and the onset. David, let's go inside the pages of Tink's BUGTastic Surprise.
Okay, Tink's BUGTastic Surprise, as you said, written by Maria Boyd. And you'll have to excuse me, I'll be looking back and forth at my notes. But
got the trusted notes into 2025.
Okay. Well, it's also illustrated. I want to mention that by Danica. I think Danica Runyon is the illustrator. And Maria opens the book with a dedication to her middle daughter, whose name is Tink, thus the name of the book. And here's the dedication she has. You are such a gift from God. Your creativity, imagination, and unique way of seeing the world are truly special. Never stop being exactly who you are, my heart, she says. This book is for you, and it's signed Love, Mommy. Well, the book begins by Tink saying, I am Tink. And Tink explains that she notices things that others may not notice. For instance, if you see a hair clip, Tink sees a lobster's claw. Or if you see a box, Tink sees a robot costume. Sort of imaginative right there. She sees a box, she'll make a costume. Well, Tink loves being outdoors, and that is when her imagination wanders. And I guess you could say wanders too. She wanders and she wonders. That's wanders and wonders. That's what she does. Well, one day, Tink's class was eating outside. This was during school. And she says that she saw the most magnificent, spectacular, and coolest thing ever. And guess what it was? It was a shiny brown oval bug with the cutest legs and two magical wands coming out of its head. Tink had no idea what kind of bug it was, but she was determined to take the bug home, and she did. With an empty school lunch container that she had, she took the bug home. Well, she got a name for it. She named it Fufu, F-U-F-U. So the bug cockroach's name is Fufu. Probably the first time in history a cockroach has had a name. So here we go with Tink and her friend Fufu, the cockroach. Well, she thought about all the adventures that Fufu and she could have by using Fufu's magical wands, and maybe they could shrink down to Fufu size. This is all in her imagination, of course. And they could dress up, and she could be a princess astronaut or many other magical adventures they could have. That's what Tink was thinking. Well, after she and her older sister had dinner, a bath, they were ready for bed. But Tink showed her sister the bug. And her sister said, you brought that home? That home? And her sister said, I'm going to tell Mom. So her sister told the mother, and her mom said, now you must get rid of that bug. But Tink thought, how can I get rid of the bug? Get rid of Fufu? No adventures yet. Instead, she left the bug by the front door. It was out of its container. So, and she went upstairs so Mom could tuck her into bed, thinking nothing more, but Fufu was now loose. But what they didn't know that Fufu had began, she began to crawl up the stairs. Well, Mom tucked the kids into bed, and then she went downstairs or outside of the room, and they heard this huge, piercing screams from Mom. And she discovered the cockroach and then followed Mom. And, oh, that was it. Mom started to run when she saw the cockroach, and it followed her, and she was screaming. As you could probably tell, Mom was not too friendly with bugs. She didn't really like them. So Mom woke everybody up in the house. Well, Tink heard Mom's screams, but Tink reassured her, now everything is okay. But I don't like bugs, said her mom. Tink said, it isn't a bug. It is Fufu. And Mom said to Tink, okay, we have to have a chat. Mom said that she loved that Tink brought the bug, the cockroach, home, Fufu home, but this is a cockroach, and Fufu probably has family and friends, and Fufu must miss them. Mom said that I think you should release Fufu back into the wild. And stressing, it's sort of comical, Mom was stressing way, 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 way far away from the house. I don't think Mom wanted Fufu too close to the house. Well, Tink said, well, can I at least say goodbye to her? And Mom said yes. So Tink told Fufu how sorry she was that they didn't have a lot of adventures and that I took you from your family and friends. But then Tink added, I don't care what anyone says. You are not disgusting. You are remarkably made. And please come back for a visit anytime, she told Fufu. And well, the next day after school, Tink came home, and Mom asked Tink if she brought any extra friends home with her. And Tink said, well, not today. Oh, in the last pages. So that's how it ended. Not today. So not today. But the last pages, there is an illustration of Mom, and they're outside now, looking at Fufu. And Tink went into the house, and she called her mom, are you coming in, Mommy? And Mommy responded, well, yes, in a second. And that's what her words were. Oops, I blocked my face with a paper. But here's what I think the illustration is saying. And as you've often said, the reader can use their own imagination and draw their own conclusions. And the conclusion that I drew from the illustration of Mom looking at Fufu is two things. She was glad that Fufu is returned to the wild, and Mom is trying to decide if she is happy that Fufu is returned, or if she is trying to appreciate Fufu as her daughter Tink does. And that's the expression that could be on Mom's face in the last illustration. But at any rate, Fufu is back in the wild, and Mom is thinking to herself, I believe, well, I really am glad that my daughter has an interest in the world around her, especially Fufu. And that's how it ends. And, but again, the reader can use their imagination to determine the ending.
Yes.
But then on the next page, it says the end. And under that, it says based on actual events. Yep. And that is the story of Fufu. Now, there is a list in case the reader wants to check them out, at the end of the book, of cockroach facts. And I'll just give you a few of them, which I found were interesting. Did you know that fufu is an American cockroach? I didn't know they had nationalities, but apparently fufu is an American cockroach. And fufu's long legs help her move fast. And this is, I never thought of this. Fufu can run up to 3 miles per hour. That's a long way for a cockroach. And Fufu didn't get her wings until she was an adult. And Fufu can hold her breath up to 40 minutes. So there are some facts about cockroaches, and that is Tink and the BUGTastic surprise.
I gotta say, first things first, you did an incredible job encapsulating the story and taking us inside the pages of Tink's BUGTastic surprise. In the near 4 years that we have been doing this program, we've done books tied into dogs and cats and I think some other animals, but I believe this is the first story that has encompassed a cockroach as one of the characters. So right off the bat, one of the reasons why, I mean, even though like a cockroach is maybe not necessarily the most aesthetically pleasing animals that are out there in the world, you know, animals, insects, bugs, wildlife, whatever you want to classify it as, right? But it definitely shows some creativity that helps this book to stand out more so than anything. Normally, when you hear the term fufu, you might hear like fufu would be like a French poodle.
Exactly, that's what I was going to say.
Again, like, you know, further, like I can just imagine again, like, you know, little ones enjoying and reading the story like Fufu the cockroach, and then they have this like grin on their face. It gets kids engaged. It gets kids animated even more so, and you really see like at the very beginning of the book where it's a little bit past the beginning of the book, and there's the passage that says, I twisted on the lid, put my container back in my lunchbox. Back in class, I thought about all the adventures Fufu and I would go on using the Bug's magical wands. And you literally see Tink and Fufu having these magical adventures. That you see Tink and Fufu on like a pirate ship. You see Tink wearing a little princess crown tiara, and then also a little crown of some sorts on on this cockroach, right?
Yeah, yes.
and then they're out in outer space. You see like little astronaut helmets, right? So again, the imagination, the creativity, the wonder, it's literally spilling out into the pages.
And the name Fufu is, you know, children like nonsense words too.
They do.
And they like to make up nonsense words. And I think just fufu is just a sort of a little nonsense word that's a lot of fun. And it fits into the creativity that this book encourages. And it's a delightful story. And you're right. I would be hard pressed to identify another book that has a cockroach as a leading character.
That is very true. That is very true. And again, you see this wonderful dynamic that continues on because we're literally going inside the mind and the heart and the everyday activities of a girl that is Tink's age. So for example, you see Tink in the bubble bath, you see Tink getting ready for bed. And again, so it also chronicles a traditional day in the life of a child, because again, you know, when you're a parent on your end of things, you know, you have the kids that are, they have their adventures during the day, whether it be, you know, before school, after school, then they start to settle down. And so again, the book also in a very simple context has multiple different sorts of layers. And again, one of the things well too that we've talked about on previous episodes of the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast is that the story is always open to interpretation, right? So right. The story and the ending of the story kind of ended off on a little bit of what I felt a little bit of a cliffhanger. Now I feel that we haven't seen the last of Tink because again, this is also based on a real life story. And one of the things that Maria is, she's inspired by her children. So when
Yes.
you're a parent, and I mean, I see this even with little Forrest. I'm not blessed to be a human parent just yet, but I'm a dog dad. And so I see, little Forrest, my pride and joy, and he does all of these, amazing things and sometimes really stupid things. But like, I sit here with this look on my face that, Forrest has his own adventures. And so, being able to bring the creativity from that and to put that into book form for other children and parents and families to be able to enjoy, I think is great. At the very end of the story, as you touched upon, there is also learning more about foo-foo cockroach facts. So again, we'll just mention the first three because we don't want to give away the whole kit and caboodle. Foo-foo is an American cockroach. Foo-foo has 6 legs, wings, and 2 antennas. And foo-foo's long legs help her move fast. So again, as you've expressed on past editions of the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast, kids are very animated. And especially if they're reading the story, in this particular instance, Tink's BUGTastic Surprise, if they're reading it with mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, one of their teachers, they're going to have a lot of questions. And
Yes.
so Maria's doing her part to be able to have the answers to some of those questions covered right off the bat, especially if kids have questions about cockroaches.
Well, it's a delightful book, and again, if you're looking for an unusual star of a book that stars a cockroach, this is the book for you. Well, actually, Tink is the star, and Foo-Foo's the co-star, I guess, of the story. But I think you're right. At the end of the book, my interpretation was that mom was, well, maybe cockroaches aren't so bad. Foo-Foo hasn't gone away, I don't think. And you're right. I think it does leave some open-ended to have another adventure. So I hope our viewers and listeners check out their local bookstore or library and see if they have a copy of Tink and the BUGTastic Surprise, right?
And as we always say, David, I know that you always love when I say, but it is true that local libraries and children's and independent bookstores, they are the pillars of our community. Not only our community,
That's right.
also our neighborhoods as well too. So if you head on over to your favorite local library, your favorite children's or independent bookstore, and they stock their copies of Tink's BUGTastic Surprise, fantastic. If they don't stock their copy, make that kind recommendation. Let them know that you heard about Tink's BUGTastic Surprise right here on episode number 45 of the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast. Because again, more than likely, this will be the first book that the bookstore or the library will actually have that has a cockroach as its main character, at least in this particular form. The last thing that I also wanted to mention about the story at the very end is, at the end of every children's book, you always have it about the author section. And I really love how Maria encapsulates not only just this book, but her entire work for children. Readers of all ages can expect imaginative, empowering, and wholesome stories from Maria's books, inspired by the adventurous and real moments she shares with her daughters. Each story is a treasure trove of creativity and love, ready to capture the hearts of readers. One of the things, and again, I'm not blessed to be a parent just yet on my end of things, but one of the things that is true, especially leading into 2025, I really feel that parents want to be more intentional in what their kids watch, read, how they spend their quality time. Obviously, there's times, television can serve as a healthy distraction. There's times it can be the exact opposite. But we're encouraging, whether it be parents, educators, grandparents, when you take that time to spend with your children, your grandchildren, your students, make it that much more intentional. We all have a lot of things on our to-do lists and a lot of things to get done in 2025, but take that extra moment, that extra present moment, just to say, you know what, let me feel into this book. Let me feel into this story. Let me feel into this experience with the little one in my life. And you'd be surprised when you take the time to be more intentional in what it is that you do. It's got a greater chance of not only turning out that much more fun and enjoyable for the little one, but also learn something along the way as well, too. And of course, one of the many ways you can pledge your support for Maria is by leaving a 5-star review. If you head on over to Amazon.com, you can leave a 5-star review if you feel called and guided to do so. That lets Maria know that she's doing wonderful and much needed work for children, parents, families, educators, and as we like to say here on the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast, those who love great children's books. Now, David, we've had the good fortune here, and now we're entering into the 11th year of service for children's authors at PR from the Heart, which is hard to imagine, like mind-blowing. And we've had the opportunity over the years. There's some great children's authors in the land down under, known as Australia. And so the trolley is really racking up some mileage here on episode number 45 of the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast. So we go from San Diego, we go to Pittsburgh, we go to Tucson, and then we go beautiful area that is forever known as Australia. And that is where we will find Julie Busuttil. She is not only a children's author, she is also an intuitive medium as well. So she has wonderful spiritual gifts and helps people to connect with their own gifts in the process, inspired by the passing of her daughter, is the touching story Emmerson in the Clouds. Now, before we crack the cover and dive into the pages, one of the things that we want to let our viewers know about this book, it's a hybrid of a children's book / early readers. So early readers is the next step up from picture books. So as you see on screen, this is what Tink's BUGTastic Surprise looks like, the cover art of the book from Maria Boyd. And then also simultaneously, now we shift gears and we see Emmerson in the Clouds. So you can just tell that they're a little bit different, but the heart, the intention, and because I still find myself a little deeply touched, not even little, but deeply touched, because over the years, authors have come to me to share their stories, and in some way, shape, or form, they've either been impacted by death, grief, and loss, and or they've written a book about death and grief and loss. And as I've been very transparent with you, one of my visions for my life, this lifetime, is to open up a children's hospice for terminally ill children out here in San Diego, California, in La Jolla, to be precise. And so anytime that a book comes out that touches upon death and grief and loss, I always go back to still, David, one of the most popular videos online when people are doing searches about how to talk to kids about death, grief, and loss. The episode of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood where Fred talked about the death of his goldfish, that is still widely viewed because Fred always said, and it was really encapsulated in the Tom Hanks Mr. Rogers film, A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, that anything that is mentionable is manageable, and anything that is manageable is mentionable. And so there's something as well about children's books that death, grief, and loss can be a very sensitive subject, and parents may wonder, how do I start this conversation? Especially if there's other kids that are involved, and let's say that there's a child, that one of their children passes away unexpectedly. Then it's a really sensitive conversation. So we're going to take the time to crack the cover and dive into the pages of Emmerson in the Clouds, where not only are we going to be diving into the pages, but we're going to be taken to the ascension plane in the process. And we'll be talking more. If you're wondering what's the ascension plane, if you don't have a little bit of an idea right now, we're going to fill in the rest of the story. And also, since there are several chapters within the story, we're not going to be mentioning the whole overall every single thing that happens within the story. We're going to be covering several specific threads, several of the specific passages in the story that really made a strong impact on us. And then, of course, share our overall reflections on the story as well, our overall heartfelt reflections. So, David, let us crack the cover and dive into the pages of Emmerson in the Clouds, written by Julie Busuttil.
Okay, well, according to the preface of the book, Emmerson in the Clouds is based on a true story. And the author, Julie, found out during a doctor's visit that she was carrying twins. And she jokingly said to the doctor, well, she's so relieved she wasn't carrying triplets, but she'd really have her hands full. And the doctor said that there was a third who didn't make it, a girl. Uh, so that is set up right away that the two brothers were born and the the girl was not. But Julie says in the preface that as a medium, she has had many encounters with Emmerson since her passing in October of 2015. She goes on to write that a fellow medium helped her realize that writing a book about Emmerson would be a healing journey and in turn help other parents who have lost a child. And I agree. When you read this book, I've read the whole book, but we're going to talk about just a few chapters. Julie writes that it's a healing experience to write about a loved one, in this case, Emmerson, who may not be physically present, but remains in your heart, meaning Julie's heart. The presence of Emmerson, Julie can see in her heart and her mind. And Julie has an interesting perspective, imagining what Emmerson might be doing in the afterlife and how she may be spending her time. Now, that's a very interesting perspective. Emmerson, as we just mentioned, never took her first breath, but Julie considers her the baby of the family. As we mentioned before, there are two brothers who are twins, and I think there's another older sister. In fact, Emmerson continues to grow at the same rate as her brothers. She's bright and bubbly little angel, and that word right there says a lot. She's calling her a little angel, but I think we could take that both ways. She is a little angel, and she loves to share in mischief. That is, and she loves her family. That is what Emmerson loves. That is still in place. Emmerson in the Clouds is not an easy book to describe here. I think it should be read cover to cover and in one sitting. And after reading it, reread it. There's so much to think about in the book. And after I read it all the way through the first time, I took several hours and just sort of thought about what's in Julie's books and how to describe it. There's so much there. First of all, the book is about the afterlife. And Julie writes that each character in the book is based on a loved one who is now in the afterlife or someone who's had a special relationship to Julie. Each chapter is a remembrance or a relationship. For instance, in chapter 1, Emmerson is exciting to meet her family, and she lay motionless in her mother's tummy. In the book, they say mums, but I'm going to change it to mothers, but she says mums tummy. She couldn't wait to start exploring the moment she gets out of her mom's tummy. She was so curious, imagining all the fun and magic that would lie ahead. Suddenly, Emmerson felt a squeezing sensation, and the noises that accompanied the squeezing sensation were so loud. And she was accustomed to hearing her mom's voice, but the voice she now heard was not her mom's voice, but the voice beckoned Emmerson to follow it. She did and found herself in a magic place with fairies, butterflies, and color all around. Well, maybe she was dreaming. The voice grew louder, but still soothing. Come meet your family, the voice echoed. Emmerson thought the squeezing sensation must have been her mom giving birth. That's what Emmerson did. I'm in the physical world, she thought. I can meet my family. Well, the voice greeted Emmerson. And I think we know she's not in the physical world because she's hearing from her great grandmom. And she said, over there are your great granddad and your granduncle and your family. In other words, they're in the ascension plane. She was so confused as to what happened to her. Her great grandmom explained that she was in the clouds and the place was called the ascension plane. And you are here to help other children. You will welcome them and help them find their families. Well, she thought she saw her mom in the ascension plane, but her mom gave no response. But she saw her mom's tears falling, and she did hear her mom's voice. And her mother is saying, well, I hope you're okay. We love you so much wherever you happen to be. And that's interesting, wherever you happen to be. That's what her mom said. I'm so sorry. I didn't know what I did. And Emerson felt so sad. Mom was thinking that Emmerson not making it probably was her fault. And she noticed a stream of pink energy flowing from Mom's heart to her heart, to Emerson's heart. Oh, Mom's right here with me. That is what it feels like. Now, she is in the ascension place. Her great granddad lovingly held her in his arms, and he told her that he has waited for a long time to meet her. In other words, the granddad maybe passed away 20, 30 years ago, and he always wanted to meet his great granddaughter, and now he is. And he added, everything will be fine. Your mom, your dad, brothers and sisters will be along shortly, meaning you will meet them here on the ascension plane someday. And great granddad assured her that she can see them anytime. You just need to think about them. And he added, and poof, you'll be there. This place is really magic. Well, that's the end of the first chapter, and it's called The Journey Home. Now, and my interpretation of home is, well, the ascension plane. But could that be, and this is just my wanderings, if that could be another name for heaven?
Yes.
It's never mentioned in the book, but that's my interpretation. And as you've often mentioned, John, that many books we have reviewed over the years, events and places, storylines are often open to the reader's interpretation. So that is my interpretation. And again, it's interesting that heaven is not mentioned in the book at all. It's the ascension place. That's my interpretation, of course. Now, there are 8 chapters in the book. Each chapter deals with a loved one or a special person that Emmerson meets. And at the beginning of the book, the chapters give different people that she meets. We're only going to talk about several of those chapters, but there's a lot of wonderful stories within those chapters.
And I think one thing briefly, David, to mention is the fact that and you briefly touched upon this is that Emmerson has a very special mission on the ascension plane. So not only is she meeting wonderful people, but especially the children that are coming into the ascension plane.
And that's her mission.
Correct. So there's a whole arc of the story from the very beginning all the way to the very end. Even though there's different characters within the story, it ties into Emerson's mission on the ascension plane. And one of the other things to mention, wasn't sure if you had covered this previously, but these characters that Julie has created, many of them are inspired by real life family members. Yeah. I had the opportunity to recently interview Julie, by the way, on one of the newest episodes of PR from the Heart's children's book Spotlight series, which is the sister program of the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast. So we'll also do our part to provide the link to my sit-down conversation with Julie, and she shares a little bit about this more in detail, but she even mentioned something very touching. She said, you know, she's at the point in her life when there's even more people that she knows that have passed on, that have transitioned, that are in the ascension plane, that are in heaven. And so, you know, one of the things before we continue on, it's interesting. I know that, you know, sometimes talking about the afterlife or talking about heaven, it can be a little bit of a slippery slope. It can be a little bit of a sensitive subject because different people have different beliefs. Technically, we don't know what happens when we do die. We know that, you know, for some people feel that it's just like, this is it. This is the whole thing, the whole kit and caboodle. One of the things that I firmly believe, David, and it's interesting, I hold, and I'll probably get a little emotional talking about this. I have a picture of myself and my grandmother and my Aunt Nellie. This is when I graduated from 8th grade in my grammar school in Buffalo. And, you know, there have been several people that I have deeply cared about, family, friends, loved ones that have passed on. And I'm a firm believer that when you do go to the ascension plane, when you do go to heaven, that you will be able to meet and see those people again. I also firmly believe that some of the favorite experiences that you had. So, like, for example, it is a shame that Toys R Us closed its doors here in the States. I know that there's a few, they've kind of revamped it, and there's little mini Toys R Us's inside Macy's stores across the country, but it's not the same thing. Even though there still are Toys R Us's in Canada, those didn't go bankrupt. But the feeling of being able to enjoy those experiences, I feel that to me is what the ascension plane looks like, right? And it's a matter of, I even saw, and you'll get a kick out of this, I even saw, this was on social media, if you ever see a baseball player hitting a game-winning home run, and you have all of his teammates, all of their team, whoever hits the game-winning home run to win the game, you've got all the players, all the teammates that are right at home plate, like waiting for him to come home. And I guess there's someone out there, I forget the gentleman's name, but he actually collects artwork of snapshots of baseball players who, after they've hit the game-winning home run or triple, double, single, whatever, he collects those because that's how he believes his vision of what heaven and the ascension plane looks like. I thought that was just very touching, and I wanted to share that as we were covering Emmerson in the Clouds.
Oh, that's a very unique interpretation, but I think everybody has their own interpretation. And one thing about the book, the ascension plane, the way it's written here, it seems to be such a positive interpretation, I guess you'd say. This book is very, very positive, despite a certain sadness too. But at any rate, where were we? We had. I know. I was going to say how helpful the book would be. I think it'd be helpful to grieving parents or to anyone who's grieving over a loss or of a friend or a family member. Oh, in fact, the book could be helpful support for a grief counselor too, to give to a person dealing with a loss or a loved one. You know, I would think an adult who's maybe going through some grief would find the book supportive in a way. I will always try to figure out how the books we talk about on the Bookcast could be helpful to others. And in a way I could see that. And it's a book, and I think you mentioned a little earlier that it's the only book that we've talked about that I believe that's not written for a preschool audience. This is not a preschool book, but I think
There has been,
you could interpret it,
yes, there and
but
there
it's not a picture book.
and there have been some other books that we featured over the years. The majority of the books that we feature are the traditional children's picture books.
Yes.
But I know that there have been some, I believe, some early readers. I do believe that there has also been some middle grade books. If I think we covered one of my favorites, Donna Sager Cowan's "With the Courage of a Mouse." That was earlier
Yes.
on during our time. So the great thing as well, before we continue on with a few more of the passages within the pages of Emmerson and the Clouds, the great thing about books, they're all needed for children, whether they be picture books, early readers, middle grade books. They're all needed in every way, shape, or form, because remember, we want to do our part to inspire our children to continue to reading at the earliest ages, but we want to raise the next generation of readers so that kids continue to read in grammar
Yes.
school, in high school, in college, so that when you're at your age, David, when you're at my age, right, we're both at the age, we're both in our 30s. That's what we're telling the audience. We're both in our 30s, right? So when you're in your 30s, right, you want to continue to have that love and joy of reading, whatever it may necessarily look like.
Yes. And today there's a lot of competition for reading, for people to read. There's television, there's games, there's video, there's so much competition. And that's one of the reasons I think we want to do these bookcasts, just keep books in people's mind. There are books, and read a book every so often. There are people who don't pick up a book very often.
Unfortunately, no.
At any rate, I hope the bookcast does that. It'd be an excellent book for college age students to read as part of their curriculum, or a psychology class, or even an early childhood class. This book would be helpful. Well, I don't have time to describe all the chapters as we talked about earlier, but there's another chapter. Oh, chapter 2 it is. Emmerson meets Dougal McStrugel. Did I say that correctly? And it's a very poignant story. That is chapter 2. And Dougal was a large child, mainly because he loved to eat. And he lived with his grandmother, who didn't express her emotions very often. But she did get angry when Dougal ate all the ice cream. That made her mad. But Dougal loved the food, and his grandmother was wealthy, and his grandmother's chef made a lot of food for him, and it was seemingly endless. And he lived with his grandmother because his parents had died in a car accident. Well, his grandmother had a busy social life, and Dougal didn't realize he was lonely until one day he slid down the stairs and he broke his ankle. Well, in the process, the doctor working on Dougal's ankle, the doctor discovered that Dougal had bone cancer. And during the next 6 months, it had spread throughout his body. Dougal had mixed emotions about his condition, and he knew that his life was being cut short. And one night in bed, he thought about meeting his mom and dad. Of course, they were passed away in the accident. And he drifted off to sleep, and suddenly he woke with a falling sensation and colors all around it. In the meantime, Emmerson was on the ascension plane. She was watching children as they arrived. She was, as you said earlier, the friendly hand of welcome. And Emmerson was in a place where she could create anything just by using her imagination. She could create giant ice cream cones, but her favorite pastime was flying. It was the first thing she taught other children when they arrived at the ascension plane. But she needed to be at Marshmallow Bed. Now, Marshmallow Bed was where the children seemed to arrive when they came to the ascension place. And of course, Dougal was confused and asked, well, where he was. He didn't know where he was. And Emmerson, the perfect greeter, told him, you are at the ascension plane. Let me show you around. So that's the end of chapter 2. Emmerson has met Dougal, the boy who lost his parents, and now he has succumbed to bone cancer. So he is now at the ascension plane, and Emmerson is just showing him around his new home. In chapter 3, Emmerson greets her Auntie Marty, and this too is a relative somewhere along the line. She didn't have much time before Auntie Marty arrived. She knew Auntie Marty was on her way. And Emmerson wanted to have flowers because flowers were her favorite thing. Auntie Marty loved flowers. And she was with her daughter, Auntie Marty, on the physical plane. And suddenly, here she was on the ascension plane. Emmerson told her aunt, ascension plane is a level of existence. So what happened is that Auntie Marty passed away. She's on the ascension plane, and Emmerson is meeting her Auntie Marty. Oh, now here's a concept that you might weigh in on too. Emmerson then is introduced to the viewing room. Now, I think that in my mind, the viewing room is a place where all you have to do is intend to see your favorite things. You can intend to see them. That's the viewing room. And you can visit the viewing room anytime you want because it's always with you. The viewing room is where Aunt Marty can see her daughter.
Mm-hmm.
Now, did I explain that correctly? I hope I'm doing the explaining these chapters because I think that's my interpretation of the viewing room. We all have that viewing room. And Auntie Marty does. Auntie Marty can see her daughter from that viewing room. And I guess it's the image that you can conjure up in the viewing room of someone in the physical plane. Is that your interpretation too?
It's similar, but yet a little bit different. And so the review room is found in chapter 7, which is titled Little Leo and the Review Room, which, by the way, the little nod to little Leo is the fact that, a lot of kids, when they're growing up, they have imaginary friends. I remember growing up and I had, I would either talk to myself or, talk to like an imaginary friend. I'm almost positive I probably had at least one imaginary friend growing up. But going to be fast forwarding briefly to page 54 of the story. And the illustration spread of the review room is absolutely beautiful. You have a different hues of purple. And of course, we love purple here at PR from the Heart because it's one of our favorite colors within our branding. But Julie starts off by sharing, all you can do, and this is the part of the story I'm going to share. All you can do is be his friend and ask him if it is okay to go into the review room with him, Pop said. Okay, Pop, I will, replied Emmerson. Leo and Emmerson finally made their way to the review room. Here they could see all their lives, past, present, and future. It was like watching a big TV where they could simply change the channel and move to another life period. The room helped people come to grips with the change to the ascension plane. So what I'm interpreting from that is that when you move from the earthly realm into the heavenly realm, you move to the ascension plane, you're kind of wondering, like, what happened, right? Like just a minute ago, I was here. Now the next minute,
I'm here.
And when you're being able to see all of the lives, right? From the past, from the present, and the future, it's like it kind of helps you come to, as the story says, come to grips with the change where it's like, okay, now I understand that I'm here. And it's interesting because it's long since been said, and this is just maybe from people who have had like near-death experiences. People who have had near-death experiences often say that there is some sort of a viewing room where you're able to look at different parts of your life, where in essence, it's almost like a life review, and you can kind of look back and you have a better understanding of why this happened the way that it did, why this person came into your life, while this person exited your life. Because oftentimes in life, things may not necessarily go the way in which you expect. I know, for example, when my grandmother passed away in the summer of 2013, there was a span of time where I had lost touch with her. And I reconnected with her shortly, like once or twice before her passing. But if I would have known that she would have passed, I mean, and you probably heard people say this, you probably felt this in your own way, David, like if you could only have one more day to spend with such and such and so, right? Whatever if it's your grandmother, if it's your father, if it's your sister, if it's your mom, if it's a best friend, if it's a furry friend, right? But so one of the things how this all links together is the fact that the review room and the ascension plane, they're all open to interpretation, but knowing the fact that, again, and also at the very bottom, it says, together they watch Leo's entire life unfold. And again, Leo is the inspiration for was the imaginary friend. From the moment he became a thought in his mom's mind, they followed his transition of his physical life on Earth, watching his birthdays and seeing all the people he had lost when he was still young. So it also, again, also at the very end, this is important that I mention this right here. I can show you how I see my family, Leo. It takes a bit of practice, but if you stick with it, you will see them whenever you want. And this is where it brings more comfort and hope and solace. This helps me while I'm waiting for my family to arrive. And I'm probably getting a little emotional more talking about this, but I know that my grandmother is awaiting for the patient time when I posse out and I, go to the ascension plane, but she knows that life is just getting good for me, and I have a lot of work to do on my end of things. And then the story ends by sharing with that last word, Leo felt a little better and became hopeful that he could see his family again. So this passage, not only talking about the review room, David, but, grief is something that doesn't take a vacation.
That's right.
There's times when you feel like I healed this grief. And then 3 years later, unexpectedly, it's just like a wave comes and hits. And for me, I know this is just speaking from my own lens, through my own experience. I know that I've held on to hope, knowing that my grandmother is proud of me. I know that she's shining down on me wherever it is, with whatever it is that I do. She wants me to enjoy my life. She doesn't want me to be sad. At the same point, when I am feeling sad, she wants me to be with those emotions and feelings, because she knows that, I'm now at the point in my life where I know that those feelings and emotions will pass, but she knows that there will be a point in time, and I know this as well, that we will reunite again. But ultimately, that message of hope, because whenever someone is moving through grief, even though you may not necessarily know what is the appropriate thing to say to someone who is navigating through grief, you want to be able to hold the space for that person and assure them that in some way, shape, or form that your loved one is proud of you. They want you to be able to continue to enjoy your life. But again, it's really important, especially when you're in the earlier grieving process. You don't want to come across as, oftentimes the best thing to do when someone just recently loses someone is just to give that caring and compassionate ear.
Yes.
People just want to be listened to if they're moving through the earlier stages of grief. But then when you can fast forward, like for me, I fast forward, hard to believe, it's 11 and a half years since my grandmother passed, which is hard to believe. But it's now I'm at the point where I have more of an awareness of what I feel is the bigger picture, even though I still don't necessarily know what the ascension plane looks like, what heaven looks like. I just hold on to hope that all of that will work itself out, however it's meant to, whenever it's meant to.
Well, I guess everybody has their own picture in their mind of what the ascension place must look like. But
Yep.
in the book, it's a very positive place. That's my interpretation, where Ascension Place is a positive place to be, and a lot of color.
Very much so.
That's what. Well, I don't know how far we've gotten, but you were.
We were at the very end of chapter 7.
Yes. Now the last chapter is chapter 8, and it's interesting. Emmerson wondered how she could approach her twin brothers. She wanted to visit her twin brothers. And I guess her spiritual side, she tried to speak to her family on the physical plane, but nothing seemed to work. She tried yelling at them and whispering in their ears, but nothing worked. And it made her so sad. So I guess it's her spiritual side that is on the physical plane trying to say hello to her brothers and her family. But nothing worked. But she thought of another way. Maybe I could meet them in their dream state. That is how she visited her brothers, in her dream state. And there's more to the chapter, but I thought it was very interesting roundup. She managed to, it reminded me of a song, I think you've heard of it, called I'll See You in My Dreams. Did you ever hear that song? I'll see you in my dreams.
Yep.
And in a way, that's what Emmerson is doing, or her brothers. She hopes her brothers will see her in their dreams, and I think that's a positive a way of having a positive image of someone that has left the physical plane. I tried to find a way how to explain how the book ends. That's part of it. The how she wanted to see her brothers in the dream state. But I think, as you often mentioned, and today you've mentioned a couple times, I think it's best to let the reader make their own conclusion in a way. But I will say that the Ascension place seems as if it is a place as described on the back cover now of the book. And you may have read some of this, but Emmerson's journey to the Ascension place is filled with heartwarming encounters, enchanting landscapes, and butterflies as big as dinner plates. And that's probably her interpretation of what you see in the Ascension place. I recommend reading Emmerson the Cloud. It gives the reader a version of the Ascension place. And it's a place we all one day will experience for ourselves. And that brought me to the end of the book. That well, at least that was my take on the book, how I followed reading Emmerson's adventures and her meetings and so forth. And my version of the Ascension place is so positive, and I can see colors. But we all one day, we don't know, no one knows, not even the religious leaders in the world know what's there. No one can say for sure. But we all one day will experience the Ascension place. And that's my takeaway from the book. I hope that between the two of us, I think we covered the book fairly well. There's so many more things to think about. The other chapters that we didn't talk about. And I'd recommend, it really is. And as I said earlier, I read it over once at one sitting. And I thought about it and read it again, and then made notes and read it again. And there was so much you want to write down. As I was reading, I penciled, marked, underlined a lot of comments, passages, half of which I didn't use. there were so many thoughts that I wanted to get out, but we only have so many hours for the bookcast. But that is Emerson's story.
It is, and
at least my interpretation.
One of the and thank you for all of those shares, David. The last, there are a couple final things that I want to mention is in the final chapter of Emmerson in the Clouds, which again is titled "The Dreamos Supremos."
Yes,
time, which of course ties into Emerson's twin brothers who dubbed themselves the Dreamos Supremos. You see a beautiful photo. This is page 67. Share this on screen here, where you literally see Emmerson and her mom.
Yes.
And I have come into contact with people who have lost children at a very young age. In fact, a close friend of mine from over the last several years, whose little one passed away at a very young age. She lives in Canada. And you see this, almost this sense of relief and comfort and peace, because when you're a mom, when you're a dad, and I'm not speaking from experience on mine and things, but I can only imagine if you're a mom, you're a dad, and you have a little one that passes away, or even a loved one that passes away unexpectedly, right? There's the part of you that's like, I hope they're okay. Wherever they are, whatever it is that they're doing, I hope that they're okay. And again, not to spoil or give away the whole kit and caboodle of the final chapter of Emmerson in the Clouds, but you see there's almost a reuniting that happens.
Yes.
We'll just kind of give that as a little bit of the cliffhanger. Literally, it's the book says it best in the back cover: a magical and unwavering quest for family beyond the boundaries of life and death. We encourage all of you, our listeners and viewers, our friends and neighbors, and again, of course, our fellow shining stars. You can head on over to Amazon.com if that's your preferred online vehicle of your choosing. You can leave a 5-star review for Emmerson in the Clouds if you feel called and guided to do so. Again, that lets Julie know that she's doing wonderful and much needed work for children, parents, families, educators, those who love great children's books, and especially those who are navigating through death, grief, and loss in some way, shape, or form in the process, especially parents, mothers, fathers, even, brothers, sisters, that kind of thing. And of course, it's really important to support all children's authors around the world, David, because one of the things is that, when Julie came to me and she said, I have a desire to share my story in the United States. Children's authors who live in Australia, it's important to not limit themselves as Australian children's authors, because death, grief, and loss, no matter if you're Democrat, Republican, Independent, if you're male, female, if you're short or tall, blonde or blue, death, grief, and loss impacts us all.
Yes.
And these kinds of books, including specifically Emmerson in the Clouds, they really do need to be shared with those in the process. That are navigating through the deepest of the deep and the throwest of the throws, that kind of thing. So and this really has a perfect arc, because if you see Tink, who's a very young, spunky, curious girl, right, and then you see Emmerson, who is on the ascension plane, and she is still creating her magic there. The journeys of the lives of our children, it's something to cherish. During the holiday season, we have the ability to take the time and slow down, smell the roses and watch the lights and look at the snow as it comes down. Well, maybe not here in San Diego, unless you go to the mountainous area of San Diego. But it's important, and maybe even if you don't have your own child yet, maybe you have a dog like I do with little Forrest. Or maybe you're just doing your part to nurture the inner child within you, right? It's really important that you give the time to be with the child that's in your life, even if it's your own child, if it's your dog child, so to speak. As we like to say here, of course, one of the fastest growing endorsements in the world of children's literature. It's similar to when, if you remember the late Siskel and Ebert, if you were fans of the movies in the 80s and the 90s, when they loved a movie, they gave it 2 thumbs up. Well, as little Forrest is always joining us here for every trolley stop over the course of these past, I'd say since November of 2022, if I'm not mistaken. So he's been here for a good duration of the Bookcast, maybe not since day one, but when little Forrest loves a children's book, he proudly gives it 2 paws up. And I am proud to share that little Forrest is giving 2 paws up for Tink's fantastic surprise and 2 paws up for Emmerson in the Clouds. Thank you, little Forrest, as always, for your contributions here on the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast. But when we hear the trolley, that means that it is time to go. But fear not, there are many more magical trolley stops to come here on the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast. We're just getting started. Our countdown to our 4-year anniversary. We see it in our sights. David, before we put the bow on episode number 45 of the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast, what are some of your takeaways from today's trolley stop?
Oh boy, I think the overall takeaway is just the power of books that still exist, especially the Emmerson book. But I read that one first and made notes and read it again and then I switched over to Tink, and there's as you said, there's a lot of differences and a lot of similarities in between both books. But what these 2 books gave me, especially Emmerson, is how sad I am in a way that books aren't as widely read anymore, and we're jumping to electronics. I just want books to not go out of our lives.
I agree.
And I think that's what I took away from today, the books we talked about today, especially the Emmerson, how there is so much in that book that is thoughtful, and each chapter has something you can think about and a different perspective on it. Everybody has a different perspective on sort of the Ascension place. And I think if people read that book, it would be, what's the word I'm looking for? Enlightening, so to speak, for them. So that's what I took away, the power of books today. And thank you for sending it along my way to read and to talk about.
And the whole these conversations that we're having about connecting more with children's books and encouraging and empowering your children, your grandchildren, your students to the love and joy of reading, having these kinds of conversations that may be very sensitive, very challenging. The great thing about children's books is they help us to connect to different themes and messages, whether it be wonder, curiosity. I know you said the whole wander versus wonder. I really love that, by the way. And then being able to as Fred would say, it's good to talk. It's good to share it's good to talk, to share the things, your emotions and your feelings. And these are 2 great books that really encapsulate the journey of life.
And by the way, Fred Rogers' favorite pastime was reading. Swimming was a favorite pastime, but he did that more for health reasons and just to be exercise. But every time we would go to a different city when we did different events or we were taping a program, he would seek out the local bookshop, and invariably he'd come back to the hotel with 2 books that he would buy. And he was a reader. In his home, he had bookshelves, and I think working with Fred too, I caught a little bit of that love of reading, or was rejuvenated in me. Fred's love of reading. Mm-hmm. That's, I just wanted to add that, is that he was a reader that, if he had his choice, would read day and night.
I believe that you used the term in past bookcasts that he was a voracious reader, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, he was a voracious reader, and I think I picked up a little bit of that. But, the other thing, too, and I hope parents and grandparents and caregivers listening to this, taking your child to the library and introducing them to books. You don't have to take them to a bookstore. Yes, you can. That's but just show them the different books. And I'll go right back to what we talked about a lot. Is my mother took me to the Carnegie Library in Pittsburgh and said, "Here's the children's sections. Look around, pick out some books, and we'll check them out and take them home." And one of them was Uncle Wiggily, that I hope that was remain my favorite book of all these years. And a lot of people don't know it, but it was back in the 30s and 20s before I was born. But Uncle Wiggily was a very favorite children's book, and it sort of died off in the 50s maybe, but I fondly remember it simply by visiting the library, and I think that was the beginning of my love of reading too. Not quite as voracious as Fred's, but I'm still reading. I'm going through a book right now. I'm reading a book on, of all people, or peoples, I should say, Laurel and Hardy. I don't know if you know who they are. They're a comedy team, and there's several books on them. And I'm reading 3 books simultaneously about Laurel and Hardy. I think they're geniuses in comedy, and you don't appreciate them necessarily until you read what's behind their talents. Anyhow, I won't. That's my 2 cents.
I appreciate you sharing all of that and then some, David. It's there is something about the gift of reading that gives 365 days a year and 306 during leap years as well too. If you are a children's author and you would love for David and I to be able to deliver a heartfelt review of your brand new children's book on a forthcoming edition of the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast, again, even though we're approaching the 4-year anniversary of the program, we're just getting started in 2025. Moving forth from here, you can head on over to our official website, prfromtheheart.com, or connect with us via any of our social media platforms that you now see on screen: Instagram, Facebook, X, all at PR from the Heart. In addition, of course, the sister program, we mentioned this earlier on in today's trolley stop. The sister program of the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast is the Children's Book Spotlight Series. And that is where we have the opportunity now. We just celebrated 6 years doing the program, where we have the blessing and the fortune of interviewing the top New York Times best-selling children's authors, celebrity children's authors, the top award-winning and best-selling children's book authors, middle grade authors, illustrators, and they're sharing their inspiring stories in the release of their brand new children's books. So if you're a children's author or middle grade author and would love to have a sit-down conversation to share your inspiring story in the release of your brand new children's book on the Children's Book Spotlight Series, you know where to connect with us: prfromtheheart.com or at PR from the Heart on social media. And of course, there are many authors' journeys who are just taking flight. Just one mere fraction, one mere example. We had the opportunity to create such a beautiful story for Maria Boyd on, I believe it was the CBS affiliate in Tucson, KOLD News 13. Shout out to the hardworking team there. When children's authors bring these books into the world, they very much want to do their part to reach more people, to reach more parents, more grandparents, more educators, and really make an indelible impact on the lives of children in the process. And one of the best ways you can go about doing that is by working with us here at PR from the Heart. We're entering now, we haven't hit the 11-year anniversary celebration just yet, but of course, this past year, 2025, we celebrated 10 years of being of service to children's authors across the country and around the world. So if you are a children's author and are needing dedicated support to share your inspiring story, the release of your brand new children's book, and you want to be able to create a book media tour in a city of your choosing, or a national book media tour, head on over to our official website, prfromtheheart.com, schedule your courtesy connection call. Let us see how we can be of service to you. Again, we've been very fortunate to be of service to some of the top names in the world of children's literature: John Parra, Catherine Roy, some of the best celebrity children's authors, including the iconic Sharon Lois and Bram Skinnamarink Dinky Dink, Skinnamarink Doo, we love you. And so we look forward to being of service to those who feel called and guided to align with us here at PR from the Heart in 2025. One final time again, The two books that we shared on episode number 45 of the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast, Tink's BUGTastic Surprise, Emmerson in the Clouds, penned respectively by Maria Boyd and Julie Busuttil. They are now available. Head on over to Amazon.com. If that's your preferred online vehicle of your choosing, be sure to leave 5-star reviews for both Tink's BUGTastic Surprise and Emmerson in the Clouds, because, of course, that lets Maria and Julie know that they're doing wonderful and much-needed work for children, parents, families, educators, and for those who love great children's books. And, of course, you head on over to your favorite local library, your favorite children's or independent bookstore, and if they do not stock their copies of Tink's BUGTastic Surprise and Emmerson in the Clouds, make that kind recommendation. Let them know that you heard about it right here on episode number 45 of the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast. But again, the trolley's been very patient. It's definitely racked up a lot of mileage. San Diego, Pittsburgh, Tucson, Australia. But with this being shared, we close out the program as always. We feel the presence, we feel the spirit of our favorite neighbor. David, you knew him very well, maybe more so than anyone. We remember the late Fred Rogers. And did you know that when Fred walked this earthly plane before he went up to the ascension plane, did you know that he weighed 143 pounds for his entire natural adult life? Well, interestingly enough, in his own private numerology, I think he kind of knew what he was doing, because there's 1 letter in I, 4 letters in love, and 3 letters in you. He reminded all of us, both children and adults alike, of our inherent worth and our inherent value. He reminded us that we're loved and we're special just the way that we are. So, David, as you were kind enough to spend some quality time with us here on the program, as always, same with little Forrest. We share our favorite 3 numbers as a little tip of the cap to our favorite neighbor, Mr. Rogers, 243. There's 2 letters in we, 4 letters in love, 3 letters in you. That is our reminder to you that you are loved, that you are whole, that you are healthy, that you are complete, that we see you, that we see your inherent worth, we see your inherent value. We like you, we love you, you're special just the way that you are. And also, again, little tip of the cap to our friends and neighbors at Reading is Fundamental Pittsburgh. Remember that they are the Pittsburgh chapter of the largest national non-for-profit children's literacy organization in the country. That is Reading is Fundamental. They provide children's books, literacy tools, developmental resources for children that come from low-income families all throughout the Steel City. Again, did you know that over the last several years alone, each and every year, that Reading is Fundamental Pittsburgh delivers more than 100,000 children's books to over 23,000 children in need? Let's see those numbers go up, not the literacy number. The literacy rates go down. We want to see the number of children and the number of books being purchased for kids in 2025. We want to see those numbers go up. So again, you can pledge your support however you feel guided to do so, especially if it is a financial donation. rifpittsburgh.org/donate. As we like to say here on the program, no donation is too large, no donation is too small. And of course, if these messages that we have shared within the pages of Tink's BUGTastic Surprise and Emmerson in the Clouds, if these messages have inspired you, if they've lifted your spirits, if they brought not only some wonder and joy, but also some hope and comfort in your life, and if you feel that they can provide wonder and joy and hope and comfort to someone in need, especially as we start off 2025, you can, of course, subscribe to PR from the Heart's official YouTube channel. If you haven't had the chance to do so, join the more than 22,000 plus members of the PR from the Heart family that are our loyal YouTube subscribers. We want to thank you for your continued support of PR from the Heart, for your continued support of the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast, for your continued support of children's authors across the country and around the world, just like Maria Boyd and Julie Busuttil, who again are doing wonderful and much needed work for children, parents, families, and educators, and for those who love great children's books. For the pillars of our community, local libraries and children's and independent bookstores. But above all else, we want to thank you for helping us to walk home, the children of the world, our fellow friends, our fellow neighbors, and our fellow shining stars. Again, Happy New Year to wherever you are, wherever you may be. And we'll see you once again for another episode of the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast, another magical trolley stop very soon. Goodbye for now.
Bye.